Hey guys, it's Stars, and this is my reaction video to Dark Side of the Ring, the double life of Kanyon. I thought that this was an important episode to talk about, especially today, where not so long ago we had Daphne who killed herself, committed suicide because of mental health issues and depression, and Kanyon, we have come to find out, led a life just like Daphne's, where pretty much his whole career he was battling undiagnosed bipolarism and probably schizophrenia, paranoia. All of those mental health issues can fall under bipolar. Being someone who has dealt with a personal family member that has bipolar, a lot of what was said about the way Kanyon would react, the highs, the lows, the days in bed, the outbursts over nothing, they're out to get me paranoia, is all too familiar. And unfortunately, during all those years, no one knew exactly what was wrong with Kanyon or Kris. Some of the closest people to him would be his target during these outbursts, like James Mitchell. And I wish at the time that James Mitchell had understood what was going on with Kanyon, other than thinking it was a bad temper. Because if he had, he could have maybe gotten Kris the help he needed. I feel like those years of self-torture and self-detriment paid its toll on Kris. And to pile on the fact that he was gay and afraid to tell his family, his friends, his employer that he was gay, having to hide this whole separate life and reality, that only, in my mind, contributed to his paranoia. Being scared that someone was going to find out he was gay, where back in that day there weren't, or not that there weren't gay athletes, they didn't know, they didn't let us know they were gay, for fear of affecting their career, their fame, their money, being an outcast, being tortured by their teammates or their co-employers, co-workers, especially in something as physical as wrestling, where, for all we know, it could have, back in the day, he could have been really affected in the ring. They may have, I'm not saying they would have, but they may have ended up shooting on him and really making impact, really hitting him, really causing him physical harm because of the fact that he was gay. I'm not saying that would have happened, but it very well could have. Like they said in the episode, it wasn't commonly accepted back then. It was shunned. It was made fun of. It was a point of contention to think that someone that they shared a locker room with were gay and may be checking them out or looking at their what have yous. So I fully, that's the main reason I wanted to do this reaction video to that episode. Like I said, because it's so close to us after Daphne committing suicide. A lot of depression and anxiety right now because of everything going on in the world. So I thought that would be a good reaction video. I think it was very enlightening. I hope that they continue to shine a light on mental health. I mean, you have to figure being a wrestler or an athlete where you're on the road 300 days out of the year, you're away from your family, you're never home. You miss birthdays, Christmas, graduations, weddings. That takes a toll. And if you don't have a family that understands and appreciates that you're doing it for them, that can also take a toll, where they're holding it against you personally that you missed these days or these holidays or parties or recitals. And I think that that in itself can play a role with someone's mental health, especially if they already have mental health issues that maybe they're not aware of. Maybe they never suffered these symptoms before and they're just now showing themselves in their head, and it's got to be very confusing not knowing what's going on in your head, not understanding it for yourself. How do you explain it to someone else if you fully haven't comprehended what's going on in your own head? If you don't know why you're feeling the way you're feeling, how can you explain it to someone else? If you're not understanding why you have the voices in your head, how can you explain it to someone else? So I think that's a big part of understanding mental health, not only being someone who is personally affected by it, but being a family member of someone or a friend of someone who is affected by it, seeing some of the signs and symptoms and knowing, hey, maybe this is a problem. Maybe I should have them mention it. Maybe I should reach out and mention it. And I think there's a possibility that maybe that may have helped. I mean, it wouldn't have solved all of Kris's problems, but it may have helped him learn to deal with his sexuality problems and dealing with that, and being able to know that at some point it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But I think in his mind, in the beginning it was. To him, it did mean the end of the world if people found out, which is why he kept it. He was so paranoid about people finding out that he went to such lengths to know that people didn't know. And being able to confide in James Mitchell that he was gay, I think that also put a lot of pressure on James Mitchell, and in some ways I believe that's why James Mitchell became his target, so to speak, when he did go on the manic highs and lows, because he knew that James Mitchell already knew. And that just shows the trust that he had in James Mitchell. And I'm at least happy to know, or relieved to know, that at least he had someone he could confide in. And I appreciate the message that James Mitchell did at the end of the episode, encouraging people to look for the signs, or be able to recognize the signs and be willing to reach out on behalf of someone who is dealing with this. So yeah, I really liked this episode. I thought it was very enlightening, and like I said, I think it's a good timing kind of thing in relation to a lot of the deaths we've had recently in sports and entertainment, of people of fame and fortune, and athletes taking their own lives. I mean, like James Mitchell said at one point, he looked at Kanyon and said, "What the hell do you have to be depressed about? You're famous, you're a wrestler, you're in movies, you have money." Kanyon's response being, "You have no idea what it's like to be in my head." And that's what it's all about most of the time for people who do suffer from depression. It's not that they believe their life sucks. It's what's going on in their head. And that's what a lot of people who don't suffer from depression don't understand. And that's the thought that a lot of people have when they find out that someone has depression. Their first reaction is, what do you have to be depressed about? But it's a mental thing. It's in the head. It's not them doing poor me, my life sucks. It's in the head. Like Kanyon said, you have no idea what it's like to live inside my head. And I think the more exposure that's put on it, the more understanding there'll be, and that will lead to, I believe, in my opinion, less crime sprees, less mass shootings, things like that, because we end up finding out that a lot of mass shooters are mental health sufferers as well. So I think it's good that media and episodic shows are trying to shine more of a light on mental health issues. As I've stated in the past, if you or someone you know suffers from mental health or depression or have suicidal thoughts, I once again will put the suicide hotline down. Kanyon's death was ruled a suicide. He did overdose on his antidepressants. And it's sad that I'm a little upset that James Mitchell knew or had an indication that Kanyon was going to attempt suicide the last time he saw him, but yet failed to try to help him. He just got on his plane and went home. I'm not blaming James Mitchell, but part of me wishes he had done something. He had reached out to Kris's family, Kris's closest friends that lived near him, somewhere, just someone who would be able to maybe check on Kris, try to talk Kris through it. Because Kris was a great athlete. He was great as Mortis. He was great in the WWE. And I think that he would still be a big player today. And the sad part is, like they said, today it's so much progressed that he would be back to being just one of the boys today, because so many athletes and wrestlers have come out and it's so accepting now of sexuality or transgender that it doesn't even matter anymore. So I think that was a world that Kris would have loved to live in, but what's sad is he took his own life in part because of his sexuality and his mental health issues. But once again, I thank you guys. Let me know what you thought of the episode, if you agree with my reaction. Like I said, I'm glad mental health is being talked about more, because I really do think there are people suffering in silence, not understanding what's going on, not knowing how to verbalize it or explain it. So all I can do is ask, if you know someone that suffers from mental health, or you're talking to someone who you think suffers from mental health, just try to be understanding. Understand that a lot of times they don't understand what's in their head, and it's like a murky, foggy puddle sometimes, whereas for a person who does not have mental health issues, ordinarily your mind is clear. So just try to be understanding with each other. Try to look or not look for signs, but know the signs when you see them, and don't be afraid to reach out. Yeah, all right guys, I love you all. Thank you for watching, and yeah, this was my reaction to The Dark Side of the Ring, The Double Life of Kanyon. Thanks guys, love ya, peace.